Now, that's a little bit about me. I want to get to know you. I want to ask you a question and write down your answer in the notepad that you've got. If you had an extra 40 hours per month, essentially an extra work week every single month, what would you do with that extra time? How many of you would put down something like spend time on hobbies? Spend time with family or loved ones, right? Do more work. There are a few of you sick people here in the audience. How many, honestly, the first thought you had was sleep more? Right. Okay. I know that answer having 3 children. Now, the reason why I start with that is because during this presentation, I'm going to be able to get you about 5 to 10 hours per month. He didn't mention this, but I have a breakout session later today as well. And I'm going to go into specific strategies, and we'll be able to get much more of that 40 hours per month. Does that sound like a good thing to you? Okay. The second thing I'd like to do to get to know you is I found that there are 3 groups of people that I work with when it comes to productivity. The first group I call the Zen Master. And they have always been organized, always been in control of their time and their space. In fact, the concept of time management is a little unnecessary to them. How many of you would put yourself into the Zen Master category by raise of hand? The tumbleweeds run through the room. I know that there's 1 or 2 humble Zen Masters here. So for those 1 or 2 people, if I can help the rest of these screwed up people make your life a little less miserable, would that be of value to you? Okay? The second group I call the wanderer. And the wanderer is someone who is inherently organized. They have the heart and soul of a Zen master, but something's happened in the last few years, hasn't it? You've lost your way, and you're not quite sure where you got off track, but all of a sudden you used to be organized, you used to be on time, and now you can't do that anymore. How many of you would put yourself into the wanderer category? Great. If I can show you where you got off track and show you how to get back to that place of order that you crave, would that be of value to you? And then the last group I call the pig pen. And the pig pen has, people are already raising their hands. Proud pig pens. You've never been organized. You've never been really that good with time management. It's not to say that you haven't been successful. It's just that you've learned to succeed in spite of your natural tendency to create chaos. How many of you would put yourself into that category? Yeah. And the rest of you are unemployed. Now, for those of you who are pig pens, what I'm going to do is show you how to get that order and that time management that you really do need, but without sacrificing your creativity and your ability to build relationships. Now, the reason why I start with these 3 groups is to also help you understand which group I fit into. Now, if you saw the way that I operated now, you would think me a Zen master, 100% all the way. But the reality is I am a pig pen through and through. It's my natural tendency to create chaos and disorder everywhere I go. You used to have to use a shovel to get from the door of my office to the desk. And the chaos extended far beyond just my physical workspace. It was also a career issue. I was jumping from path to path to path, including at the bottom there, if you can see that picture, trying to be a rock star. My wife supported me for a few years while I had a band. I was jumping all over the place. And it was about the point where my first child, my son, I knew he was going to be born. So this was approximately 9 years ago, that I realized something needed to change. I could not do this to my family. I could not support them with this kind of behavior. So I did what all screwed up people do. I saw a shrink, right? And I went and sat down with him, and he gave me a test. And he said, "That's really interesting, but I want to make sure, let me give you another test." He gave me another test. And then he said words I'll never forget. This is word for word. He said, "Has anyone ever talked to you about ADHD? You are freaking off the charts, ADHD. If there were a 5th standard deviation, you'd be in it. I can say with 99.99% accuracy, you've got it." Now, the reason why I start with this story is not because my presentation is about ADHD. It's because we live in a world, as Seth Godin put it on a quote in my book, we live in an ADHD world, right? This is the reality of our day. And only 4 to 8% of the population actually has the genetic condition known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So what about the rest of you? Where is this behavior coming from? And more importantly, what is it costing you? There's a number that's very important for you to learn. The number is 28%. This number comes from BaseX Research, which is a research firm out of New York that studies human productivity. And what they found is that the average knowledge worker, that's anyone who's not hammering a nail or lifting a shovel, the average knowledge worker loses 28% of their day due to interruptions and the recovery time associated with those interruptions. I'm going to use the term switches and switching costs, but it's the same thing. And this has everything to do with that first question that I asked you about what you would do with that 40 hours a month. This is that time, that 28%.